The fluorescent hum of the Seoul National University Library was a familiar drone now, but it hadn't always been. 3 months in, and I, Arvon from Chennai, was still navigating the labyrinthine, unspoken rules of Korean social life. My biggest hurdles? Everything from ordering food to figuring out when to bow and, apparently, my own heart, which had decided to stage a hostile takeover the moment I stumbled into Min-jun. It was my very first day on campus, a sweltering September afternoon. I was already sweating through my shirt, wrestling a giant, unfamiliar map, and convinced I was going to be late for my orientation. My head was swimming with K-pop lyrics and a vague hope that life here would be just like a K-drama, complete with perfectly timed accidental encounters. Wish granted, accidental encounter. I was rounding a corner, eyes glued to my phone screen trying to decipher a map app, when bam, I collided with a solid wall of human. Books scattered, my flimsy paper map sailed away, and I nearly went down. Chusong hamnida. Jinja chusong hamnida, I babbled, bowing frantically, my face burning. My gaze finally lifted, and my breath hitched. Standing over me, impeccably dressed, despite the heat, was a guy who looked like he'd stepped right out of a webtoon. Broad shoulders, dark hair falling just so, and eyes calm deep, and somehow incredibly gentle that we're already assessing the damage. He knelt, gracefully collecting my scattered belongings. "Guanchineo," he asked, his voice a low melodic rumble. "Are you okay?" I could only nod, my tongue suddenly tied. He handed me my phone, then my tattered map. Our fingers brushed, and a jolt went through me that had absolutely nothing to do with static electricity. "I'm Arvond," I managed, sounding like a dying goldfish. Gave a small, polite smile. "Min-jun, careful on campus, Arvons." And then he was gone, a phantom of cool politeness and devastating good looks. First impression, catastrophic, heart rate, irregular. New goal, see Min-jun again, fear level. Already elevated, he saw me at my worst. Little did I know, the universe had a twisted sense of humor. The very next week, Professor Lee announced our groups for the East Asian Cultural Studies project. And there he was, Min-jun, looking just as composed and unfairly handsome. He was, naturally, our quiet, meticulous leader. My stomach did more than just flips. It performed an entire K-pop dance routine. I was simultaneously thrilled and terrified. My biggest internal struggle wasn't just adjusting to the new culture, but constantly battling the fear of how different I was. Being openly gay wasn't a given in India, and from what I'd observed, it certainly wasn't common here. Every shared glance, every accidental brush of arms during group meetings, sent a jolt of longing through me, immediately followed by a chilling wave of, "Don't mess this up, Arvind." The idea of anyone, especially Min-jun, discovering my true feelings was a constant gnawing worry. This wasn't a K-drama where two guys could just fall in love without consequence. Our first draft was ... fine. Min-jun had done the bulk of the research, Ji-woo had formatted it beautifully, and Hannah had found some fascinating statistics. My part was the introduction and conclusion, tying it all together. But as I reread Min-jun's section on the historical context, a thought nagged at me. It was solid, but a bit dry. A little more flair, a stronger thesis statement, and it would be perfect. Maybe, just maybe, if I made his work shine even brighter, he'd notice me. Not just as the clumsy Indian exchange student, but as someone capable. Someone interesting. Someone worthy of his attention. "Just a little polish," my inner voice whispered, sounding suspiciously like my overly optimistic aunt. "They'll appreciate the initiative. Show them you're a team player, a go-getter." And then, like in a business proposal, the CEO notices the intern's hidden talents and secretly falls for them. I remembered Lars's warning. They won't tell you if something's wrong, Arvond. You have to read between the lines, or just fix it yourself if you see a problem. Notification, Lars's wisdom activated, level, risky. Also, Operation, Impress, Min-jun, initiated. Soundtrack, BTS's filter on repeat in my head, specifically the part about wanting to be seen differently. So, late that night, fueled by instant coffee and a misplaced sense of proactive genius, I opened our shared document. Min-jun's section. I started editing. I rewrote paragraphs, tightened sentences, Even added a few more academic-sounding phrases I'd picked up. I didn't change the core information, just ... enhanced it. I clicked Save with a triumphant flourish. Achievement unlocked. Proactive team member. Side quest. Min-jun's approval in progress. Current fear level low. The next day, in our usual study room, the air felt different. Min-jun was even quieter than usual, his eyes darting between his laptop screen and me, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in their depths. Ji-woo kept adjusting her glasses, a tiny frown creasing her forehead. Hannah, usually a chatterbox, was unusually subdued. It was like a scene from a K-drama where the tension builds before the big reveal. Only I was the clueless protagonist who had clearly missed a major plot point. So, I chirped, trying to sound casual. I just did a little bit of polishing on the historical section. Thought it could use a stronger hook. I glanced at Min-jun, hoping for a nod, a small smile. Instead, his gaze was distant, his jaw subtly tight. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that made the library's hum seem deafening. This wasn't the dramatic pause before a confession. This was the awkward silence before a reprimand. Min-jun cleared his throat. "Ah, Arvinsy," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "You... changed quite a lot. Warning, cultural compass malfunction. Readings erratic. Also, Min-jun's expression, unreadable. It's panic level. Hi. This is definitely not how it goes in Reply 1988, when they fix things for each other. Oh, just minor tweaks." I insisted, my smile feeling a little too wide. To make it flow better, you know? For the professor, my eyes flickered to his, searching for any sign of approval, but his gaze was still guarded. My heart sank. This was it. The moment I messed up everything. Not just the project, but any chance of him seeing me as anything other than the clueless foreigner. The fear that being different, being me, was inherently a problem in this new, structured world crept in. And the biggest difference, the one I kept hidden, was my attraction to him. Being gay in India was complicated enough. Here, where public displays of affection were rare, even for straight couples, discussions about sexuality were often hushed. It felt like an insurmountable wall. Ji-woo finally spoke, her voice soft, but we had discussed the structure already. Min-jun spent many hours on that section. My stomach dropped. Error. Initiative interpreted as disrespect. Reevaluate Lars's wisdom. Also, operation, impress Min-jun, critical failure. My K-drama knowledge failed me. Why didn't anyone just tell me? The professor's feedback session was brutal, though delivered with typical Korean politeness that somehow made it worse. "The historical section," he said, tapping a finger on the projection while well-researched seems to have shifted in its focus. The original intent, I believe, was clearer. It feels a little disjointed now. He looked directly at Min-jun, then at me. Min-jun bowed slightly, murmuring, "My apologies, Professor. I will review it." His eyes met mine for a fleeting second, and I saw not anger, but a deep, quiet disappointment. It stung more than any scolding. It felt like I'd not only disrespected his work, but also confirmed every unspoken fear I had about being an outsider. Incoming message. From Mom, subject, humility, beta, also heart status, shattered, addendum, fear of exposure, activated. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. It wasn't just that my improvements were bad. It was that I had unilaterally altered someone else's work, especially the group leaders, without consultation. In a culture that valued harmony, respect for hierarchy, and collective decision-making, I had committed a cardinal sin. I hadn't just made a mistake, I had caused them to lose face. And in doing so, I felt like I had pushed Min-jun even further away, solidifying the distance between us that I so desperately wanted to bridge. The thought of my feelings for him ever being discovered here, adding another layer of difference to my already foreign status, sent a shiver down my spine. After class, I cornered Min-jun by the lockers. "Min-jun, see," I started, my voice trembling. "I am so sorry. I didn't understand. I thought I was helping. But I was so wrong. I should have asked. Should have discussed it with you all." My gaze dropped to my shoes, unable to meet his eyes. The thought of his disappointment, especially after all the silly hopes I'd harbored, was unbearable. He didn't respond immediately. Then, a soft sigh. "It's okay, Arvinsy," he said, his voice still quiet but with a hint of something else. "Understanding? We know you meant well. It is just. In Korea, we usually discuss everything together, especially when it is someone else's work." He paused, then added, "But thank you for trying to make it better. I appreciate your effort." My head snapped up. He was looking at me, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. My heart did a strange little flip. It wasn't the dramatic, sweeping gesture of a K-drama lead, but it was real. And for a moment, the fear, the cultural barriers, the unspoken anxieties about my identity, all faded. Emotional response. Unexpected warmth. Min-jun's smile. Dangerous. Potential BL plot twist. Initiated. My boy's love radar is pinging. We ended up re-editing the entire section together, paragraph by painstaking paragraph. It was slow, awkward, but necessary. As we worked, our hands sometimes brushed over the keyboard, and the air between us, though still tinged with the earlier misunderstanding, also crackled with a new, unspoken awareness. He would explain a nuance of Korean history, and I would offer a different way to phrase it in English, sometimes even using a K-drama reference that would make him chuckle softly. We were truly collaborating. By the end, the project was genuinely stronger. Not because of my initial flair, but because we had truly worked through it together. And somewhere along the way, the disappointment in Min-jun's eyes had been replaced by a quiet respect, and perhaps something more. A connection as subtle and nuanced as the Korean language itself began to form. That night, as I walked back to my dorm, the city lights of Seoul seemed a little less dazzling, a little more complex. I still had so much to learn about Korea, about its unspoken rules, and about the surprising turns my own heart was taking. The fear of being different, of being seen, still lingered, a quiet hum beneath the K-pop beats in my head. But maybe, just maybe, understanding the unspoken rules was the first step to finding a connection that went beyond words. And perhaps a little humility, a lot of shared awkward moments, and the slow, gentle unfolding of something beautiful were the best hook of all.